It began with a silence that no one in Australia could explain. The skies, usually filled with the chatter of birds and the restless hum of the wind, suddenly became heavy with a stillness that made hearts tremble. Then, in the middle of that unsettling quiet, a burst of light tore through the horizon, painting the heavens with colors no artist could ever reproduce. Red, violet, and golden rays spread across the night, twisting like fire, yet leaving no smoke. Thousands of people took out their phones, recording the eerie phenomenon above Sydney and Melbourne. The videos flooded social media in seconds, and the question spread faster than the images themselves. Was this a sign from God? "Look at the sky," whispered a trembling voice captured in one of the recordings. "I've never seen anything like this. Is it the end?" Others shouted, some prayed, and many wept openly, convinced they were watching the fulfillment of prophecy. Fear was mixed with awe, confusion with reverence. No one could remain indifferent to what unfolded that night. Within hours, international media picked up the event. Scientists rushed to explain it, calling it a rare atmospheric reflection combined with solar winds. But the words rang hollow. Too many witnesses had felt something deeper, an invisible weight pressing on their souls, as if eternity itself had brushed against the earth. Christians across the world began to recall the words of Jesus in Luke 21:25. "There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea." Could it be that the words of Christ were manifesting right before our eyes? On the beaches of Queensland, fishermen reported hearing what they described as trumpet-like blasts echoing over the waves, even though no ships were nearby. Families gathered on verandas claimed they felt vibrations under their feet, as if the ground itself was trembling in agreement with the heavens. Social media lit up with testimonies. "My children screamed, but I fell on my knees," wrote one mother. Another said, "It was like the sky was speaking. I couldn't move. I knew it was from God." The story quickly divided the nation. Skeptics mocked, dismissing believers as gullible. Yet videos continued to pour in. Strange cloud formations resembling angelic figures, a burning red moon partially hidden by a black shadow, birds flying in erratic patterns and then vanishing into the dark. What was happening in Australia seemed to be more than coincidence. It carried the fingerprints of prophecy. But this was only the beginning. Within 24 hours of the lights, heavy rains descended upon regions that had been suffering from severe drought. Dry riverbeds suddenly filled, and fields once cracked with thirst were flooded. To many it looked like a blessing, yet others feared it was a warning. Floods swept through small towns, forcing evacuations, and some families lost everything. One man cried before the cameras, "First the sky, then the water. What is coming next?" His words struck like an echo of Joel 2:30-31. "I will show wonders in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness, and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord." Pastors across Australia filled their pulpits with urgent messages. "Brothers and sisters, this is not random," declared one in Sydney, voice breaking with emotion. "Jesus himself warned us to watch for these signs. We are living in the days of Matthew 24. Some congregations prayed through the night, their worship drowned at times by the sound of thunder that rolled unnaturally across the land. Each flash of lightning was met with raised hands and tears, as if the heavens were both terrifying and tender in their message. Meanwhile, political chaos unfolded in the nation's capital. A controversial decision regarding global digital identification was announced, strangely timed, just as the population was distracted by celestial and natural phenomena. Critics accused leaders of exploiting fear to push surveillance measures. Christians, however, connected the dots. Was this the foreshadowing of Revelation 13, where no one can buy or sell without the mark? Could the skies have been God's way of warning his children to pay attention? And then came the earthquakes. Small tremors at first, dismissed as ordinary, but within days reports increased. In Western Australia, near towns that rarely saw seismic activity, the earth cracked open roads and shook houses. People ran into the streets, shouting prayers and curses alike. One elderly woman lifted her Bible, declaring, "This is not the wrath of nature. This is the shaking of God." Whether one believed her or not, the words resonated far beyond her village. The tension in society grew. Fear pushed some into prayer, while others drowned their unease in distraction, ignoring the signs. But the escalation was undeniable. What began as lights in the sky now spread into the earth and society itself. Supermarkets reported panic buying. Rumors of wars in nearby regions added fuel to the fire. And always in the background, the question loomed, was Jesus warning us that time was running short? Scientists kept speaking, but their voices seemed powerless. They mentioned auroras, magnetic fields, plate tectonics, yet their explanations could not soothe the trembling hearts of those who felt the unmistakable presence of something beyond science. One commentator admitted on live television, "I don't know if this is God, but I do know I'm afraid." His confession sparked outrage from his peers, but captured the attention of millions who felt the same. Australia became the center of the world's gaze, a stage where heaven and earth seemed to collide. Prophets from different nations began posting online, declaring visions of angels standing over the continent, swords drawn, announcing judgment and mercy intertwined. Some spoke of revival, others of catastrophe, but all agreed Australia had been chosen as a messenger to the nations. And in the midst of all this chaos, ordinary families wrestled with fear and faith. Children asked their parents if Jesus was coming that night. Husbands and wives argued over whether to prepare bags or prepare their souls. Churches overflowed with seekers, people who had never stepped inside before, desperate for answers. The Bible, dusty on shelves, was opened once again, and the words seemed alive, breathing fire and comfort simultaneously. But this wave of signs was not finished. More revelations were yet to come, stranger, darker, and more undeniable, because the question that began with trembling voices in the night still echoed louder each day. Was this truly a sign of God? The days that followed the strange lights and tremors pushed the entire nation into a state of heightened awareness. Newspapers printed dramatic headlines, "Heaven opens over Australia, tremors of judgment and coincidence or prophecy." Television panels became battlegrounds where scientists, pastors, and skeptics clashed, their voices rising in heated debates. But while the arguments raged in studios, in the streets people whispered prayers, eyes constantly drifting upward, as if waiting for the next sign. And the next sign did not delay. Over Perth, the night sky once again erupted, not with colors this time, but with a sound. Witnesses described it as a trumpet blast, deep and rolling, unlike any instrument made by human hands. Some said it lasted only seconds, others claimed it reverberated for nearly a full minute. Dogs barked wildly, children cried, and many adults froze, unable to explain what they were hearing. A farmer captured the moment on his phone. The sound was eerie, metallic, and terrifying. He posted it online with the caption, "They told us to wait for the trumpet. It's here." Immediately, believers connected it to 1 Corinthians 15:52. "In a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed." While theologians debated whether this was the trumpet or simply a foreshadowing, ordinary Christians felt the urgency in their bones. Churches were filled again. Pastors struggled to calm the fear, preaching repentance and hope, while at the same time confessing privately that they too had no answers. As if in rhythm with the trumpet sounds, chaos on the earth increased. Torrential rains escalated into violent floods that swept across New South Wales. Homes were swallowed overnight, roads split apart, and entire communities were displaced. Videos circulated of people clinging to rooftops, crying out to God. And again, the prophetic words echoed. Matthew 24:7. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Were these disasters not aligning perfectly with the words of Jesus? Amidst the destruction, strange discoveries surfaced. Near one of the flood-devastated areas, rescuers uncovered ancient stones with markings resembling Hebrew letters. Archaeologists rushed to the site, speculating that they might have belonged to an old migration or lost travelers. But Christians saw something more. Could God himself have unearthed hidden reminders of his covenant as waters rose in judgment? The story spread like wildfire. People debated whether the stones were authentic or symbolic, but the timing could not be ignored. Wonders in heaven, turmoil on earth, and now mysteries rising from below. It seemed as if all creation was speaking at once. Meanwhile, technology added its own layer to the storm. Just as the signs grew louder, the government announced that a digital identification system would soon be tested across several cities. It promised convenience, security, and the elimination of fraud. But for many, the words of Revelation 13 pierced through the polished announcements. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark. The connection was undeniable for those already shaken by the heavenly signs. Could it be coincidence that such measures were introduced now, in the shadow of celestial warnings? Families were divided. Some embraced the new technology, convinced it was progress. Others refused, fearing it was a step toward the mark of the beast. Heated arguments broke out in homes, workplaces, even churches. One man testified online, "My wife says I'm paranoid, but I tell her, open your eyes. Look at the signs in the sky, the floods, the trumpets. This is not progress, it's prophecy." His video went viral, resonating with millions who shared his conviction. The pressure mounted internationally as well. Other nations began monitoring Australia with growing unease. Some leaders warned their citizens that religious hysteria was spreading, while others secretly sent researchers to study the unusual phenomena. Prophets in America, Europe, and Africa released visions, claiming that Australia was a trumpet call to the world, a wake-up before the final shaking. And then, as if confirming their words, a massive blood-red moon rose over the Australian desert. Unlike typical eclipses, this moon glowed with an intensity that unsettled even seasoned astronomers. Indigenous elders, keepers of ancient stories, said they had never seen such a moon. To them, it signaled a shift in the spirit world. To Christians, it was Joel 2 coming alive. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes. People gathered in open fields to watch. Some lifted their hands in worship. Others trembled with dread. Children asked why the moon looked as though it had been dipped in blood. Parents tried to answer, but often broke into tears. In that moment, Australia was no longer divided between skeptics and believers. The blood moon demanded a response from every soul who gazed upon it. The events began to converge, the heavens roaring with light and sound, the earth trembling and flooding, society fracturing under technological mandates, and the moon itself blazing red in silent testimony. It was as if four voices, sky, land, people, and heavens, were crying out together. The time is near. News anchors tried to maintain composure, but even their faces betrayed unease. One accidentally whispered on live television, "What if this really is God?" The clip circulated instantly, shared by believers who declared it proof that even the secular could not escape the truth. In homes across the world, prayers rose for Australia. Christians began fasting, interceding for mercy. If judgment begins in Australia, one pastor in America warned, it will not stop there. The signs are global. The Lord is speaking to all nations. His words echoed the conviction spreading among millions that what was happening in Australia was not isolated but a prophetic warning for the entire earth. And yet the climax had not been reached. Something darker was looming, a revelation that would send shivers far beyond the continent. Because the question had shifted from, "Is this a sign of God?" to "What is God warning us about?" The answer, many feared, was about to unfold. The signs over Australia are more than wonders. They are warnings. The skies lit with fire, the earth trembled, the trumpet echoed, and the moon turned to blood. Jesus told us these things would come, not to terrify, but to awaken us. Time is short, and the choice cannot be delayed. Repentance is no longer optional, it is urgent. The heavens cry out, the earth groans, and the Spirit whispers, "Prepare your heart." The question remains, when the final trumpet sounds, will you be ready to stand before the Lord? The decision is now.